recording too frequently. Please try
Go.
again. Oh, there we go. All right, everybody. Welcome back to ACES53 with Ed Parco and myself. And as you know, today is a Thursday. So what do we do on Thursdays is we bring in a special guest that we call the Joker. And that's someone with a special skill or talent or information to share with you guys that you can learn from. And one of the things, this year is we kind of pivoted. We started in more about sales specifics last year in 2023. But in 2024, it's been more about how do you brand yourself? How do you stand out? What are you doing really to grow your business in different ways, not just picking up the phone and calling people? So today's special guest Joker
Before we get there,
is,
can I add to that?
yeah.
So I did a podcast earlier this week with somebody, and we were talking, and his book's coming out through so I was talking about his book, and it's about branding and everything. And he's like, you really got to dig down and you got to ask them, your customers, what you should not stop doing.
Mm-hmm.
Not should we do better, but what should we not stop doing? What are the few things that they have done so well that they should not stop doing to get to the differentiation of it? And when I was talking to him, I said what I did, and he goes, so you're really into giving people their dignity back. So you're into dignity.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Okay.
Because I do veterans and veterans business owners, and I do people with reverse mortgages. And he's like, that's what you focus on, dignity. So that's what you should say in your stuff.
This will be a completely different episode, but we really need to have on one or two different branding experts again to kind of talk about that, how they draw the stories out. I can think of two people that have workshops and things that people come to them to help craft. What's their message? What's their elevator pitch? What's the story when they're on there to really reach people? But I love that you give people your dignity back. That's a really cool.
He says just you deal with dignity.
Yeah.
Really. So
that's awesome.
And I'm like, oh, that's a totally different way to look at it. Besides the fact that I help people tell their stories, I now with what I do there. And those are things that we don't understand ourselves, and we need somebody else to help us. And I did another podcast when I was interviewing a lady, and she's talked about all the women she helped, but she says that she does it for everybody with a certain business, or this dollar to this dollar. I'm like going, okay, you said that, but what I hear is you deal with women.
Yes.
But I didn't want to limit myself. Okay, you're not. Just because you pick your niche doesn't mean you can't help other people also.
Correct.
It's just who you focus on. But today's show is not about that. Today's show is about more along the lines. So we went from how to be the authority in your industry, right? That's what we really pushed. And then we got into masterminds. How are people doing masterminds? And we're kind of coming back to that again to talk to people about what are they seeing differently along the lines of doing masterminds. So I'll shut up now and let you take over, Brian.
Sure.
But I just wanted to drop some information that I came across this week that I thought was really different. And that all comes from asking those questions of your past clients that people are afraid to call.
Agreed.
Call them and ask them. Yeah.
What difference do I help you make? Yes.
Or what shouldn't we stop doing?
And I was going to say, ironically, you kind of led us into our guest. So I'm going to add Jim Morris here. And so one of the things that Jim is known for is impact effect, but his entire brand is about impact and how are you helping other people? So a lot of people come in and it's about, look at me, what can I do for you? But Jim, you kind of have a reverse view of that, correct?
Well, I would say that it's not so much necessarily what I need or what may benefit me in the moment. It's more so understanding how to create impact for a specific subset or category or type of person, right? And I think sometimes we go in thinking, hey, this is what the industry norm is. This is what I've seen in the past. This is what works, what doesn't work. And I think all that analysis is great. But where I really focus is how do we disrupt?
Right.
How do we create radical change? Right. And how can I learn from the things that are working, but enhance them at a higher level and do that because I care. I care about the outcome of an attendee at my event. I care about the investment they make to get to Nashville, to get in the room. And I understand it and I don't take it lightly. And I think that's where the intentionality comes from. And the hours and the work and the grit to put together an event, a conference, a mastermind, whatever it may be, that really hits home and serves the people that are in that audience. And I think a lot of people want to do that, but to actually execute that takes a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of analysis, a lot of different experiences that I've had.
Mhm.
And then also conversing and building human connection and understanding what other people's experiences have been, and I think that's where we sometimes often let our brand or our ego, or we get in that mode where it's all about me. And then in turn, that event or that conference or that mastermind serves you very well. But is it serving the attendees, which in turn is the goal of why you created it, to have massive impact?
Mhm.
So I had to learn that the hard way, man. It didn't just come that way. I made a lot of mistakes and have done a lot of things that were very much copycats of people I admired that worked for me, but not everybody's me. And times are changing, and where we're going as an economy, as a world, and I'm not going to get into those details. Things are moving fast. So how can I stay abrupt? How can I stay on top of it? And how can I deliver where it is impactful and it is effective?
Mhm.
And by doing that, I think it's through conversing and connecting and chatting with people to see what they need, not so much what Jim Morris needs in the moment today.
Thought maybe you're cracking a beer there, Brian. You are in
No,
Texas.
energy drink.
I heard that. I was like,
Yeah.
man, we're starting early over here.
Yeah, he's driving me to drink.
He doesn't
I
like
can't
his
help it.
heart. He doesn't like his heart, so he's drinking energy drinks.
Hey, I drink the
And
healthier
that's
one.
just like we put together a Firewalk for veterans, and we had 2 people who were our keynote speakers this last year. And I came across 4 more that I want to do this year. But I was like, you know what? I need to go back to the people who actually came to the event and ask them if these are the people they want to listen to this year. Because a
Mhm.
lot of the places don't do that. They just go, here's our New Year key, speakers, whether you want to hear them or not. This is what we have. And you need to go back to your audience and find out what they want. And then take a consistency. It's still your event. You can just say, I don't want to. But you really should listen to the people, because they're the ones who are going to be coming to your event and going forward. And I think a lot of people, just like you said, they're doing what they feel good about, and it makes them feel good to be up on stage. But that's not going to last long.
True. And I also believe that there's a decision to be had when you throw a conference or an event. And that first decision that I learned was, what's the outcome that I foresee, but only in a win-win situation,
Mhm.
right? And last year I lost, I would say, in several ways, and I didn't create a win-win. I also think the attendees lost, and I could have done more and have been more intentional. But as I learn and as I grow, I want to create a win-win situation to where I'm not putting myself over the outcome of the attendees, but I'm also not putting myself in a situation where this hurts. Because why would I do that? Why would I create something, give massive energy, attention, time, financing, funding to where the outcome is not positive for me? So I think you'd have to make that decision in the beginning, right? Is what is that outcome? And is there a win-win situation here? It should never be you over the attendees. It should never be the attendees over you.
Mhm.
But there has to be a level of intentionality to understand that as you go into it. And if it's not all about you, um, you will be able to pour more into the audience. And I say that out of going through those processes over the last couple of years. Um, and last year specifically, one of the things that I almost cut out of the program was me calling everybody who bought a ticket.
Mhm.
Well, why would I do that? Because it didn't benefit me from a time consumption standpoint, right? But I
Mhm.
didn't. I actually ended up doing it, and we're going to do it again this year, and it was absolutely amazing. And what it did was it uncovered information that the audience is looking for and seeking without them having to be vulnerable. So what do I mean by that? Jim Morris calls you Ed. Ed, you and I don't know each other as well as Brian. You don't know me. I don't know you. And I ask you, hey, how's your business failing? What do you need the most help with right now? You're probably not going to give me 100% vulnerability. You
Right.
may give me 20%, 10%. Most people will give you 0. Oh, things are rocking and rolling. But when I call you and I ask you a certain type of question and segment it strategically, what I find out is the same thing that I wanted to find out, but not asking you to be vulnerable and tell me what you're failing at or what you're struggling with. So I often take a positive light to it. If I gave you $1 million, what's the most important thing you'd spend it on to grow your business today? That tells me what you're failing at. That tells me what you need most. But I do it in a fun manner of, you're getting $1 million. What would you go spend that money on? If you could spend one thing, what would you put that mill towards? That person is uncovering their problem in their business without even knowing that they're informing me of that, which in turn I can use that information to now customize and create the content of the conference around what's going to help a majority of the folks in that seat or in that audience.
Sure.
So there's a method to the madness.
How did that change your first year?
So what I realized was a lot of people had marketing problems. It was a sales and marketing conference last year, and I thought sales was the big problem. People didn't know where to show up, where to put their time. A lot of people said, man, I need a marketing manager. Like, I see all this stuff. I go to all these webinars, these workshops. This worked, this didn't work. I just need an expert. So we ended up doing more on the marketing side than the sales side. I originally was going into that conference last year, 90% sales, 10% marketing. And it actually ended up flipping to about 60-40 based on those conversations.
And have you had those calls this year?
Yeah. So we're still a couple months out. So I've spoken to some people, but not everybody. And what I'm seeing the most of today is how to become the leader. So when I ask about leadership, hey, who's someone you admire in leadership? Now I get to understand who they look up to, who they want to be, and why. So I kind of understand a little bit about them. And then understanding still that same question of $1 million, what would you use that? But here's the difference. What would you use that $1 million towards to become a better leader in your business? And what I'm hearing most, people aren't great at hard conversations and they're struggling, so they don't have them. And when you don't have the hard conversation, it's the snowball effect that causes a larger problem down the road. And then I talked to someone yesterday who grabbed our 2-for-1 ticket, and they're bringing 4 people with them, or 3 people, so there's 4 tickets. And he was telling me that one of the biggest issues is he knows how important culture is. He knows how people don't want just more money, but what's the solution? He knows he has a culture problem, but he doesn't want to read, give him this program, or he wants to talk and hear what worked when you had a culture problem. So we've got someone talking about that and their vision and where their vision started for culture and where it ended and how they got there. So it's actually really cool because it's lining up to what the content is already going to be based on some of these initial conversations, but there's always room for change and there's always room for pivoting and expansion. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to hear more from people. And I'm also excited to ensure that people are still excited after they hear the spiel from me of what we're going to provide. That's another piece of it. Like, if this doesn't line up for a problem that I can solve or what you're seeking today, then here's your money back. Let's not take a seat away from someone who needs to become a better leader and wants to, but then also, I want everybody to give, not just receive when they come up. And we talk about that the night before at the kickoff event. And, if everybody's going in, I was just talking to one of the speakers today, Nicole Kramer, and she was like, if everybody's going in looking to, receive, then who's giving?
Right.
And I was like, that's how we need to start the speech the night before.
So going back to what you talked about, vetting people who come in, Ed and I met at Steve Sims Speakeasy, and it's very much the same thing. You can apply to attend the speakeasy, but then they talk to you and vet you because they know having the wrong person in, while it fills your wallet, it can ruin the experience for everyone. And that's a smart way to do things, because if you're not going for the thousands of people in a room for a cheap ticket to hope that they buy something later on, the ability to vet, do you have the right people and are you setting the right expectations of what they can expect, but also in reverse? A lot of people, you and I have talked about this before, it used to be who is the speaker, and you'd go for big names that are draws to fill in audiences. And we're seeing a major shift of that in 2024 to more tactical type speakers. So the people who have the amazing stories, but weren't telling you how to replicate their stories, we're not seeing them on as many stages anymore. Or if they are, it's very much like this event is set up just to have 10 people tell you their story, but that's all the event is. And so what made you decide to go that different route in
Well,
2024?
I think it starts with my experience, is if you're putting these on, you should be experiencing what's out in the market, right?
Mhm.
You should be understanding competition, and you should be competitive. I do live in a world of abundance, but you're damn right I'm going to know what other people are doing and what the feedback is, right? So there's a conference that I typically go to. I didn't go to that this past couple weeks, but I talked to people. Talked to 10 people that went, and I heard what the feedback was. So I think what I've experienced personally and what I've conversed with others around is, man, there's enough motivational videos going around. We're all educated. We all know how to use YouTube. We all know when you feel like shit, type in Eric Thomas and you'll get a 4-minute scream fest at you to get you fired up or back on target, right?
Mhm.
Why would you pay for that? $700. Like, I just don't get it. And quite honestly, a lot of people don't get it either because they're telling me that, and in my calls and my sales calls, people do ask, is this a motivational event? Is this just knowledge? And the reality of it is if I'm putting the right people in the room, they value their energy.
Mhm.
They value their time. Time is actually very strategic and very important to them. So what I realized is if I want the right people in the room that are doing things that can be effective, that can be resourceful, that do enterprise, that do lead with human connection, which is a core theme, and want these relationships and want to be strategic about it, well, it has to be a certain character and a certain level of someone. And it has to be someone who values their time and their energy. So what I realized was, and I'm bringing this back to the time and energy piece, what I realized was no one wants to leave with a notebook full of shit and notes.
Mhm.
No one has time for it. No one wants to go. No one leaves a conference. I think there's some exceptions. Me being a psychopath is one of them. But like, no one leaves a conference and goes and schedules, 27 hours to implement 2 different strategies that they wrote down in their notebook for the next week, right? We
Right.
move on to life and we try to implement what doesn't take as much time, what's easy to accelerate or to finalize or navigate through, and we end up falling off when not doing those other things. So I've experienced it. Everybody I've talked to experiences it. And if I want busy people doing big shit in the room
Mhm.
to help each other and enterprise and resource, then those people value their time. So what I want to create is an experience where you work on your business for 9 hours in the room and leave with advancement, leave with changes and opportunities to go implement into the business, not a
Mhm.
notebook full of things. And as I've been speaking and talking and gaining advice and connecting with business owners and entrepreneurs, this is what the people want.
Mhm.
And to your point with those big names and those, big speakers, go read the comments. They're available online,
Mhm.
right? None of them are positive, and they're all talking about this. Oh, Pete called Dave, and Dave called Jess, and here's the 3 trio speaking again about the same shit to motivate people and not really help them. And like, you got to read the comments, man. It's there. I'm not making it up. So I just don't want to play in that game, and I want to disrupt and be different. And we're going to create an experience and an interaction. And it's not just going to be let's sit in a seat and listen to 10 random people talk about 10 random ways to be a better leader and this fire hose. Let's experience it. Let's take action. Let's critically think, and let's figure out what we're going to do in that 9 hours to enhance our business and our culture and our people and become a better leader.
I think a lot of people have issues in their business with being a leader and what they're doing because they don't know who they represent. The first thing they need to do, which is the last thing they do, is who is your perfect client? You got to niche that down to know. And then what your culture will come from that kind of stuff and how you're doing it and what are you doing well to find out the culture of your company and how you want to do it going forward, which is totally different than it used to be. 20 years ago, no one cared about your culture. Get to work, shut up, and do your job. And then all of a sudden people have, but I wanted to have a reason to come to work, right? Where before it was a privilege to come to work. And now it's like, why should I come work for you? And I get that, but you need to know who your client is. And most of these companies do not know who their client is, or they think it's everybody when it's not everybody.
True.
So Ed and I have talked about putting together an event, a 1 or 2 day event. We're talking about like, why not do Dallas? Because Dallas is kind of centrally located. So an additional challenge you have is because of the popularity of Nashville, it's not cheap for people to come down there, right? Case in point, I would have loved to have been. There's Sean and Lacey are doing an event there as we speak. They're doing the Book Yourself Solid event. They're out there. And I looked, and the cost to airfare and to stay is almost twice the cost of the event. And so that's something I'm sure has been a challenge for you versus like people are coming to Texas left and right because you can get cheaper hotel rooms. We've got plenty of spaces. We've been able to carry Mary Kay for so many years. So there's convention centers, there's hotels and everything. But that's got to be a hard challenge also is right now, a lot of people's I don't know why I said that, don't have a lot of excess money. And so while they want to go to the event, it's the cost to get there and stay there that makes it a challenge.
Totally. So for me specifically, I did look at Dallas when I originally started this, and Dallas is the number one opportunity based on my research at that time for it to make the most sense. Feasibility, cost, flight schedules, all of it, right? It's way less than what it costs here. Very simple. But for me, man, I didn't want to just pick a random city or a random state, I wanted it to be local to Nashville because this is the community I live and breathe in. I raised a family here. And that doesn't mean we don't want people to come and fly in. And we've got people from New York and LA and Utah and Texas that have bought tickets. But part of my leadership journey and my growth is becoming true to myself as a leader. And straight up, I mean, my thought process was I'm selling out myself, man. Right? I talk about Nashville. I talk about this community, my family. I donate. I have partnerships, sponsors, charity partners that we help out. Why would I go and do all that and then, take $240,000 to a different state in a different city to throw the conference, right?
Yeah.
Let alone all the additional money coming in. So it was a tough decision for me, man. But I think it's one of those leadership decisions where I was going to feel like a sellout. And if I'm not leading myself, I can't lead anybody else, especially at the helm of a massive conference like this. And I think that comes back down to several decisions I've made around this conference to be the true leader that I want to be, and I can dive into some of those, or we can go somewhere else with the convo. But I just think it's important to really focus on myself as the leader to show up and be the best leader for others, especially at the helm of being the conduit to bring so many people together to learn and grow.
Ed, you got a question?
No.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt you because there's two. I don't want to monopolize it like I usually do if I know the guest. So
you always do, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Hey, at least I know.
You can say, I don't want to do this. It's like saying, with all due respect, I don't mean to offend you, but I'm going to offend you now with my statement.
Right. Hey, I gave you an opportunity. All right, Jim. So you kind of leaked in a little bit of something that I wanted to hit on also, just to show the dedication you have to this event. So what are the two major things going on in your life? One that's a personal one, if you want to share it. If not, you can talk about what you're doing the day after your conference.
Yeah. So this year we moved up the conference from October to September. We've got another child on the way. So a leadership decision in that scenario for me was a lot of people saying, "Hey, why don't you skip the conference? Why don't you, take a year off?" And I believe that if that would have hurt my soul, that would have hurt who I am.
Mhm.
And having a very honest and real conversation with my wife, it's all good, man. We're going to do it, and we're just going to make some changes to it. Now, by making those changes to do the conference, we moved it up to September 18th. Well, I have a TED Talk on September 19th. um, and as you know, and I don't know, Brian, I think you know this, but last year I was really sick.
Mhm.
Like really sick the day of the conference. I ended up taking 3-4 days after just to decompress and rest and all that. So I made a leadership decision for me not to do a keynote at my own conference this year. And I believe that was a leadership decision because um, it's the right thing to do ethically for the level of responsibility to show up the best that I possibly can for that TED Talk, understanding that it's the third most trusted brand in the world today and
Mhm.
has the opportunity to go see 10 million eyeballs. So sometimes things don't line up perfectly, man. But
Right.
if I was going to do this all for myself and be the leader that's self-centered and all about me, um, then I probably would have made a different decision. But I believe that this is the right decision. And there's people that I've shared this with, friends that are close to me, people that aren't, think I'm a complete idiot. They're like, dude, why would you ever do this? Like you're putting on this conference, you're funding it, all this time, energy, your real estate business slows down when you do this every year. You've got,
Right.
a daughter, you've got another kid on the way. There's been previous complications with having children, miscarriages, wife almost passing away, right? So people are like, why are you doing that? But I believe it's the right leadership decision because if my mind's focused on TED, I'm not going to be able to deliver the best keynote that I
Mhm.
possibly can. And I'm going to tell you right now, my mind's on TED from a
Yeah.
speech standpoint,
Right.
Um, and if I can't show up the best and deliver a keynote at my own conference and I put myself on stage, that's poor leadership. That's poor leadership.
Well, and for people who don't know, you don't just say, "Hey, I want a TEDx," and you just show up and talk. There's meetings that you have to attend. There's a lot that goes on. Like, what you have to go in, they have to give you kind of what's the gist of it, what's the synergy of this particular one. You have to have follow-ups. They critique your talk. They go over it with you. So it's not just a show up and throw up type thing. There's a lot of meetings and work that go into being part of a TEDx while you're trying to run your business, while trying to set up this event, while your personal life is expanding at the same time. That's why I wanted you to cover that is that's a lot of shit for anybody, right? And you and I had that conversation where you're like, do I skip it? And the fact that you said, no, I don't, I feel like it's the wrong move. It would be the easy move, but it wouldn't be the right move. And
Yes,
that's where a lot of people get stuck is we feel like nobody knows those struggles that are going on. So I'm happy that you shared that because there's a lot of people who know what they need to do, but are afraid to do it because sometimes it's easier to not, if that makes sense. So thank you for sharing that part.
totally, totally. And one of the other things too that I just want to dive into real briefly is just when you curate something like this and it's 2 events the night before, a full day conference that day, 15 total speakers, a panel, a relationship rally, vendors, sponsors, food, snacks, water, lunch, media, audio. We have entertainment. We have a celebrity drummer coming in, right? All those logistics, all those things take so much time. And I believe that the difference between Impact Effect 24 and some other conferences are the amount of time and intentionality and strategy that I've put into it. You
Right.
know, someone speaking the night before, there's 6 or 7 meetings that need to go into that to ensure that that message is delivered appropriately and
Mhm.
that bleeds into and aligns with the conference and how we show up the next day. And I think that people who brag about, oh, we launch a conference and in 60 days we have it and thousands of people come. That's amazing and that's great. Maybe that's a rinse and repeat methodology. that I don't necessarily have, but I don't want to rinse and repeat anything. I want to curate it and I want to create it. And I want to create it from scratch based on what people are telling me in real time. There's no template for what I do. And the amount of time spent with each speaker, understanding the emotions that they're going to bring, how to parlay that into the next speaker, what the transitions look like, what MC is going to talk then, what MC is going to introduce who. And the reason why we have two MCs, one, and they're picking who they're going to introduce because who they align with, who they can give a warm introduction. Like, there's no reading bios. There's no, this person comes in last minute. And I think we forget about some of that stuff. And that's why I believe we're so different. The level of intentionality going into this thing and preparation and time spent on every little piece that's occurring is hours on end. So it is a big task. And kudos to anybody trying to do, get a bunch of people in the same room and do it in a way that works and is well thought out.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to you.
Ed's like, you're freaking crazy, man.
No,
what are you doing?
No, you're just making sure people are taken care of like you should be taking care of them and finding out what they want, which people don't do these days. They just, here it is, take it or leave it. And that's why a lot of people are leaving it.
Yes.
And they're like, I don't need to listen to that same story 10 times now. Yep. I mean, we know people who their every speech is the same speech and we've heard it. We could give their speech for them.
Right.
Hey, you just sit down. I'll do it for you.
Yeah. I went to an event where it was so poorly put together that one guy got up talking about why websites are the most important thing that's out there. And the very next speaker talked about why websites are dead and the funnels are the most important thing. I'm like, literally back to back. And so all these people in line paying for the previous speaker's program, right? Because I'll rush to the back and sign up for it. And the next person up is saying, well, no, websites are dead. You need funnels. And then people are like, I don't know what to buy. I don't know where to go. So yes, curating is the way to go.
That stuff happens. And again, I'm not the expert here, guys, right? I'm just someone who gives a shit. You're
talking about what you want for your event. Other people can do whatever they want. Not everybody likes Italian. Some people like sushi. But for your event, this is what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think that in that moment and understanding that is the fluidity of the experience, right? Like if you have an up and then an immediate down, and I give the example because I've experienced this at almost, man, I let's be conservative, 50% of the conferences I've been at, I've had those experiences.
Yeah.
And that's a conservative number where, Jesse Itzler gets me fired up, right? And I'm like ready to run through walls. And this dude is just like, oh my God, like all the crazy stories and the journey he brought me on. And I'm fired up. I'm ready to run through walls. And the next speaker starts off about how they were raped at age 12. And I'm like, my mind, your chemical imbalance goes from like fight to flight to like sorrow, and your emotions are up and down, and people don't actually take that into consideration, what that does to the human body. Right. Like when you're in high fight or flight or cortisol, like a rush, and like you're not actually absorbing and comprehending some of that stuff. And when your emotions change drastically, and then that person flips on that negative story and brings you back up, you went from high to freaking low and sad to happy and high, and your brain's just scrambled. So I've experienced it, and I just don't want to do it that way, in hopes that it doesn't scramble people's brains and they can't absorb, and there's a good flow to the emotion based on what speaker is speaking and what they're saying.
Right. Well, and you've been calling the speakers to vet their speech. Hey, what's your main topic? What's the title of it? How do you plan to present? What do you need? That's a lot more than I've talked to a lot of organizers before.
There's a point where I feel like I'm annoying. Like I feel like I annoy speakers, right?
Yeah.
And I had to get over that this year. Last year, I felt like I was annoying. And then when I got out of the situation and took a 30,000 foot view, I was disappointed. I was disappointed that I didn't push harder especially based on some signed contract language,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's the difference this year is this is what I need in this moment to make this the best that I possibly think I can make it. And if I'm annoying, I'm sorry. Maybe this isn't a good fit for the conference. And I have the balls to actually have that conversation this year. And guess what? Here's the beauty of it, guys. None of my experiences are like that with any speakers this year. None, right?
Yeah.
So like I may feel annoying, but I do want to know this detail so I can structure it and set it up the right way for the most success of the attendees.
I gotcha. Well, we've kept you on here for the 35 minutes. So I know we've got your email here, or sorry, your website here, Impact Effect 24. Everybody can find you also on the real Jim Morris, right? Is that the main page?
Yeah.
And so for people that's first time seeing you on, you have a mastermind, you put events together as well. And one of the things that's really unique is not only do you have this larger event, but then you have smaller local events that also take place there in Nashville. So when people follow you online, they're going to see you speaking at different events all the time. It's not just you have one event and that's it. You know, you're actually going out, you're growing the community. You've been in real estate, you've done all kinds of crazy things. I was looking at stats that you had on one of your websites the other day of all the different types of companies and number of people you've worked with. And it's a pretty astounding number. So congrats on taking, like I said, you could have said, I have all the reasons in the world not to throw an event this year. You're moving forward, even in, you know, tough economic times. You know that it's kind of was it a field of dreams? If you build it, they will come. To put yourself back out there again. I still think you're a little crazy to have the TEDx talk the next day, but I am staying over after your event to come and cheer you on. So air horns and all that kind of fun stuff, right?
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate, just your support, friend to friend, human to human, put the business aside. It's much deeper than that. And I appreciate that from you and how helpful and welcoming you've been in the whole process and as a friend. And thank you both. Thank you, Ed, too, for having me on today and just giving me a platform to share what I got rocking. I appreciate you guys both.
No, I appreciate you being here today.
Yeah. Ed, you want to take us out?
Why not? Since I didn't get to talk any other time.
I asked you if you had questions.
I know. I was actually just listening. My questions were more statements earlier.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate you. Brian, thanks for being here. Let's get rid of my private chat there that's in my way and my banners. There we go. So people know who we were and who we are. And Jim, thanks so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate you being the Joker today. And again, we're going to next 2 weeks going to be a little different. We're going to do our best to be here. Brian's going on a whirlwind tour. And so he's going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. We'll do our best to have the shows. It might just be me or we might miss a day or so. So just work with us over the next 2 weeks. Right. Again, thanks for being here. And if you want to find out more about us, just go to our ACES53 channel, subscribe and share it. We'd appreciate it. Thank you both. Make it a great day.